everyone. Welcome, Islander fans, hockey fans, to another fun episode here at Isles Talk. I am Paul Kreischer. I am your host for this evening. We'll see for how long. Joining us this evening, we've got Joe Panettiere. Say hi, Joe.
Hi, Joe.
I knew you were going to do that. The godfather of all things Islander social media, Gary Harding.
Oh, bull dinky to that, but good evening, guys.
I can't wait for Montreal. And joining us this evening, he's no longer a special guest. He's already been on more than once. He's just here now. Rob Taub.
What's up,
Rob,
guys?
how are you?
I'm good. How are you? What's going on, guys?
Oh, Rob.
So, boys, we got some news here. New York Islanders made one heck of a splash getting Bo Horvat from the Vancouver Canucks for Anthony Beauvillier, Aatu Raty, and a conditional 2023 first-round pick. So, Joe, well, this is going to be for all of you guys, of course, but, is this a good trade? Is this a horrible trade? Joe, give me your thoughts. You're itching at this one.
Well, I think
he's going from least amount of hair to most amount of hair. So
good one. I like that.
I think this is a great trade. You took a team's number 2 leading scorer by 2 or 3 points, brought him onto your team, making him the leading scorer. And look, the guy's a fantastic center, which I'm sure Gary will give you all the stats on that. And, I hate to see Bo go, but, Bo was too inconsistent. Ratty was a question mark, and picks you can't bet on. So, fantastic trade. I think Lou fleeced them. That's the word I like to use. He fleeced the Canucks.
Nice. Gary, give me your thoughts.
I would echo in it. I wouldn't call it a leasing per se. I think it was a good hockey trade for both sides. You knew that, you heard on the wall when the season started that Bo was not going to probably end up finishing the year because of his contract status. And, and we all know what he brings to the table. And I think for the case of the two main people in this trade, I think, that old Sheryl Crow song, "A Change Will Do You Good." And I think it'll work on both sides.
Rob, give me your thoughts.
I think it was a solid. I think it was a good trade. I think it was a necessary. I think the word we're all missing here, it was a necessary trade. I think that Anthony Beauvillier's time had run its course here. I think we've seen it even going back to last year with Trotz scratching him and even Lambert scratching him this year. I don't want to say the writing was on the wall, but I believe the last couple of weeks really, really got Lou to his boiling point. And I think to a degree got maybe even ownership to its boiling point. You saw how bad they were playing. They're getting blown out at home. They're blowing leads. Things had just escalated to the lowest point you could possibly think of this season. And it stinks to see Raty go. It looked like he was showing signs that he could be a quality NHL player. But I think what they got in return in Bo Horvat is really going to pay off dividends, because they got a guy who scored 62 goals the last 2 years. He could possibly get 50 goals this year. You have a guy now, and I tweeted this after the trade, you pair him along with Matthew Barzal. So now you have a goal scorer. Even if he doesn't play with Barzal, you got a goal scorer to pair along with your best skill guy on the team. And this team has lacked 2 things mainly the past couple of years: speed and skill. They got 2 in one package. So I think it's a good trade. I think it still all comes down to the contract, but that's looking down the road. But right now, it's a solid trade. It needed to be done. Something had to be done. And I think, Lou got the message, and I think he sent the message to the locker room too in that sense also.
And yet we had, Joe, I think in the beginning of October that at that time, Vancouver and the Islanders were talking Bo Horvat, but the Islanders had very little interest at that time because, the Islanders were doing pretty well, and it was coming to that point where, Horvat was going to go straight to unrestricted free agency, and for good reason. But the key to that was that at that time also, we had assumed from Gary Bettman that the salary cap was going to go $3-4 million higher. So at the time, it was right for Bo Horvat to basically, have a career year. I wouldn't have gone unrestricted free agency. I would have gone straight to unrestricted free agency, get whatever I could. But unfortunately, things have changed. It looks like it's only going to go up $1 million, and he's in the same position like a lot of these other free agents, where term might be better than the annual, than the AAV. So this, and again, we'll give kudos to Stefan Rosner here from NYI Hockey Now. He was on this back in late November, early December, that the Isles and Horvat were back in talks, and they got him for a great pick. So we'll get it. I know a lot of people are talking about Aatu Raty. We'll get to him in a minute, but I'm agreeing with all of you. This is not a horrible trade. This is a very good trade. I'm one of those people that I think there's a deal in place for Horvat. We all know that Lou doesn't bring someone in unless he's going to get him re-signed. And, we know Lou in contracts. All he's got to do is front load some of these contracts and these players will sign. So I'm liking the deal. I will love it, of course, if he signs. But again, if he doesn't re-sign, the Islanders are still saving themselves the Anthony Beauvillier cap money that they need for flexibility, even for next season. So we're going to get into next Anthony Beauvillier real quick. Rob, I'm going to start with you this time. Anthony Beauvillier, consistently inconsistent, but man, Game 6, Eastern Conference Finals against Tampa. You had that video on your Twitter. That's about one of the biggest goals we've seen, probably. That's right up there with the Sean Bates penalty shot. That's right up there with the 2013 Isles. He's going to be remembered as an Islander.
Yeah, I think he'll be remembered as a good Islander. I don't think he'll be remembered as a great Islander. Something about him and the postseason, something just clicked. Every single series. Go back even to the Pittsburgh series 2 years ago. He was a bull in a china shop. Nobody could stop him. He almost single-handedly, along with Ilya Sorokin, won them that Game 6, if not for Tristan Jarry giving the puck up to Josh Bailey in double overtime. I mean, right. That series for me was all Bo. In the bubble, he was fantastic. In the playoffs against Carolina, he was fantastic. I think just something about the stage with the postseason stage. He even going back to juniors, he was like that with his junior squad. He was a postseason performer. I think just in the regular season, I think something just he could never find that. You were right, never find that consistency, and I don't think it had to do with not having. Sorry, what were you saying, Joe?
I didn't say anything.
Keep going.
Oh, I'm sorry. No, I think with the regular season, I think with him, it was like he would go like on a 6, 7, 8 game stretch that was like really good, solid, and then he'd go and then he'd be invisible. That can't happen. And because of how the team has been constructed the past couple of years, it makes it 10 times more difficult when he's one of your fastest guys on the team. He's one of your skill guys on the team, and you're missing those two elements on a night-to-night basis. It sucks. It sucks to see him go. He's a 25-year-old player, and I hope he finds that next level in Vancouver. I think he can. I think maybe playing with a team like that is built more on speed and youth and skill, that could be right up his alley. I just think the problem with him was it was always more like he would always find that he was always finding his game at the right time, which was the postseason. But in the regular season, when the Islanders would need it on a consistent basis, he just never had it. And the most goals he scored, the highest amount of goals he scored was 24 back in 2017-18. I can go back to that season, and we all can reminisce how bad they were defensively. But him on a line with Jordan Eberle and Matthew Barzal for the second half of this season, there was an argument to be made watching those last amount of games they were probably the second or third best line in the National Hockey League going
Yep.
the second half of the year. And it just seemed like after that, something just never, like the foundation just never stayed. So it stinks. It's tough to see a young player go, but I think the change of scenery will be good for him, and getting what they got in return, I think it was the right call. I think it really was.
Gary.
There's always certain guys that we can say 30, 40 years from now where some of us may not be around, but you look at it from a historical standpoint, you're going to have, moments, when the Islanders are having their 100th anniversary and they're talking about moments over the 100 years, unknown heralded players are going to be part of that history. Sean Bates, 2002. Eric Cairns in that same series in 2002. Wade Dublowitz with the poke check to get the Islanders in the playoffs. Certain players like that. That goal that Bo scored in Game 6 against Tampa, that's going to be another one of those moments in that 100-year celebration that will, be forever remembered. Somebody said, once an Islander, always an Islander. And again, I think the ownership has said that. So years down the road, when he's retired from the game, he'll come back to Long Island and be fondly remembered and so on and so forth. But Rob nailed it dead square on the head. The inconsistency killed him. There were nights where he was just completely in a fog. And guys with that kind of skill, that kind of talent, that skating ability, without lack of a better term, that Quebecois-ness that he exudes. You can't teach that stuff. And there are nights when he's on, he's just amazing. But sitting up in the upper deck, watching him come down the ice on a 2-on-1, and I'm standing there going, I know where the puck should be going, and it just doesn't get there. And what happens between the ears? When playoffs came out, the fog got lifted, and that's unfortunately what most of his legacy, I think, is going to be, is that, talent was there, but, when it was needed, during the season to help the team move up in the standings, it didn't come. But, he's a nice kid, well-respected, I believe, to his teammates, well-respected in the league. And, I hope in Vancouver he finds it. He can take the leadership skills that he got from, he received from watching Anders Lee and Josh and Cal and all those guys, and bring it to a younger Vancouver team. And maybe that could help them. So, like I said, no bad things really to say about Bo. I wish him well, but, unfortunately, as we all say, you got to give a little to get a little.
Joe, final thoughts on Anthony Beauvillier?
Well, there's not much I can add to what Rob and Gary both said, except that he was our John Druce. Remember John Druce with the Capitals? Wasn't a big regular season player, but he always had that one playoff series, which Druce did always against the Rangers, where he showed up and he single-handedly took a team down. And look, Bo is going to be one of those moments, guys. Remember this, remember that. And listen, there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with being a moment guy, because you had your moment. Some players never get a chance to have a moment. And I'm glad.
And Islander fans will never forget those moments.
Listen, I'm glad he had it with us. I really am. And I hope he flourishes in Vancouver. I hope the change of scenery just brings the best out of him, because he deserves it. But he owes it to himself to get to that level. He really does. He's an all-around great guy, and he deserves the best.
So, yeah. Anthony Beauvillier, I'm not going to lie. Him with Pettersson on a first line, if he got his game together, that wouldn't be a bad idea. I don't think Vancouver would. They may try it towards the end of the season if they're losing chemistry. But Elias Pettersson with Anthony Beauvillier, that that actually sounds a little nasty. I hope Bo does find his game, and I agree with all three of you. You throw in the speed, you throw in a little more of a two-way game, that he can help Vancouver with, but you put him on a first line and see if Pettersson can take him somewhere. I would be excited to see what he can do for the Vancouver Canucks. I wish him nothing but the best. He absolutely been a great teammate. All the fans love him, but I do think it was time for him for a change of scenery, to see if he can find his game, and that's the part of business sometimes. So, and again, if not, maybe he gets traded to Montreal at some point, because he is going to be an unrestricted free agent at the end of next season. So he's going to be playing for that next contract. So he's got something to play for.
And isn't it interesting, Paul, that next Thursday Vancouver comes into town? I think that's just schedule.
Oh, he definitely gets a video tribute. Absolutely gets a video tribute.
No doubt.
Yeah, he better.
Does Aatu Raty get one if he gets one?
No, good segue there, Rob. No,
they already have him. They already have him set for Abbotsford. I think they're from the thing I heard from Patrick Allen the other day, that I think he's going to be in Abbotsford for the remainder of the year.
Yeah, I knew that. I just I wanted to see if they would actually give him one as a joke. They seem to do that, So.
No. So yeah, for those of you who don't follow Isles Talk on the regular just yet, thank you for coming on. I follow the prospects. I've been following the draft since I first started blogging back in 2008. I've been through this drill before. I have been humbled many times with prospects that I thought were going to really make it and go big, and then they're not even around. They barely made it to Europe. I have eaten my humble pie quite a few times. I had said this before. I will say it again. When the Islanders drafted Aatu Raty, he reminded me of a Franz Nielsen with a better shot. Franz Nielsen on this Islander squad was a third-line center who had maybe a year or two at the second-line center, and that's when we were all saying we needed another center so that way Franz Nielsen could go down to third. All right. Everyone else is saying the same thing except for Islander fans who think he's still a top 6 forward. He's got a lot of work to continue to do. There's a reason why Lane Lambert gave him 5 minutes a night, guys. Other than the fact that Lou was showcasing him, which, by the way, we did tell you during that, watch party in Toronto. Either way, is he a good player? Yes. Does he have an NHL future? Yes. Could he be a second-line center with the Vancouver Canucks? Sure he can. Very possible, especially if Vancouver goes, the complete rebuild route. He's still young to do that, but he needs to work on his speed. He still needs to work on his overall game. And really, if he's stuck with the Islanders, the way the Islanders are doing things right now, he's maybe a third-line winger, third-line center on this team. Maybe. So by giving Raty, like Beauvillier, a fresh opportunity to prove to Vancouver that he is going to be a top 6 forward, all for it. He was not going to be a top 6 forward for the Islanders. Sorry, guys. So good luck to him. Yes, he is still young. Raty probably needs, I agree with Brush on this one, probably another year, solid year in the American Hockey League. Top 6 forward? No. Which is why he was put in the deal. Vancouver needs prospects. They desperately need prospects. So as far as the first the first round pick, guys, it's a first round pick. Is it a deep draft? Yes. So what does it mean, though? Everyone keeps saying it's a deep draft. Well, no one explains why it's a deep draft. Well, let me explain. The top 40 as of right now, we haven't even gone through the Memorial Cup championships. We haven't even seen the World Championships. We haven't seen any of the tournaments yet. the top 40 are looking really good. So if the Islanders even work their magic and they somehow get into the mid 50s on their second round pick, wherever that is, they can still get themselves first round talent with their second round pick, just like they've been doing every year since they drafted Simon Holmstrom. Lou's been doing it every year. And for those of you who are worried that you don't have a center, keep your eyes on Cameron Berg. Plays for the University of Nebraska, Omaha. He's racking up the goals. He reminds you of a Casey Zizekas / Michael Pekka. He's got a better slap shot than the two of them, but he's slowly growing his game. If anyone's going to be a third-line center for this team at this point, it's probably going to be Cameron Berg. Ruslan Isakov is down in Bridgeport. He's also a center. He can also play wing. Isakov has got the speed, but if he comes in and plays wing, you still get both. So there are still prospects that the Islanders have that don't need to be top 6 at this moment, because look at what they just did with Bo Horvat. Bo Horvat signs for let's say hopefully another 8 years. You won't need. You have Matt Barzal and Bo Horvat for a solid 5 years. You don't need a top 6 center immediately. So Lou knows what he's doing. He will find diamonds in the rough, especially in those lower rounds, because he's been doing it now for like the last 3 or 4 years. Don't worry about losing Aatu Raty. Good luck to him. And if he can make it to a second line center in Vancouver, all the best. So we'll go from there. Do you see the prospects games they have? Yeah, I get to see all of them. Yeah, they do have some good snipers playing. I always see the prospect games and everything else. I always do that. I love the draft. I love watching prospects, so on and so forth. So, and again, by the draft, I'll have several shows getting ready for you, so come join us then. So, all right, that takes care of the Bo Horvat trade and all the players included, and the first round pick. Let's get into the State of the Islanders Union address here. Usually at the All-Star break, Gary Bettman does his own State of the Union address for the NHL. No better time to do one right now on the Islanders during this All-Star break. Joe, I'm going to start with you first. Give me your thoughts on where the Islanders are right now. We know they're not out of a playoff spot. They're not out of it. They bring in Horvat. Give me your thoughts. Where are the Islanders right now?
Well, we talked a few weeks ago, and at this point, we thought the Islanders might be probably 6 to 8 points ahead of where they are right now. Hey, look, you're 2 points out, okay? You're a 4 or 5 game winning streak into getting yourself into a solid spot, depending on what the teams do in front of you. Everybody has their hot and cold streaks. You just brought in a player that just solidified the center position. He's a playmaker. And, hey, look, I like where we're at. The defense has me worried a little bit, but I'm sure that's going to tighten up too. They'll get back to playing their system. Hopefully this nice rest with the style of game that they play this week that they're going to have off gets them back to the game that we're used to seeing them play. But as far as where they are, hey, I'm satisfied. I'm happy. I'm happy they're 2 points out.
Gary, give me your thoughts. Where are you on the Islanders?
Well, again, like as we stated earlier, getting that other center in Bo, I think is going to be huge. A problem of this team for years has always been their faceoffs. You now have 2 of the top 5 faceoff men in the entire league on this squad in Bo and JG. You got a guy that's got 11 power play goals, which is almost more than the entire Islander team has scored. So you've got good positives. The teams didn't play as well with Adam Pelech out of the lineup. He's now back after a rough first game. He's starting to get his game back with the rest that Noah got, and hopefully he returns. You've got solid 6 back. I'm not totally unhappy with Aho's play, but there's been days where, I think Paul could have skated better than Aho can. So I think having the full 6 complement out there right now, I think will be good. We don't have to worry about the goaltending. So it's just like you said, it's one good winning streak away from being relevant. And I really thought in my heart of hearts that there was going to be 2 deals to be made for this team between beginning of the calendar year and the trade deadline. One is done. One, I think, is still yet to come.
Before Joe and I get giddy, Rob, give us your thoughts on this Islanders season so far.
I think, and I'll quote Lou Lamoriello, I think they're better today than they were yesterday. The way I've seen this season is there's been a lot of missed opportunity. The playing down to bad teams has cost them dearly. I feel like they could easily be fighting for that number 2 spot in the division. I think they could be ahead above Washington and Pittsburgh. I don't like Washington. I don't like Pittsburgh. I think they're finally on the downslide. I think it's on the writings on the wall in Pittsburgh that it's going to be time to sell. Washington is still inconsistent as hell, just like the Islanders are. I'll take their goaltending. I'll take the Islanders' goaltending over Darcy Kemper and Charlie Lindgren any day of the week. I just think that the injuries really hit them hard, and they can't. The problem with the way the downslide, because of the way the Islanders started their season, their turn downward, was guys started to get injured night after night after night. First it was Pelech, then it was Holmstrom, then it was next guy, then it was Clutterbuck. Well, Clutterbuck's a piece of glass by now. I think they could do without him in the lineup, and that's nothing. That's no disrespect to Cal. I think his body is finally telling him, I think it's time that your career might be finally finished. But I just feel a lot of missed opportunities. Like I was saying, a lot of missed opportunities. I think their power play has absolutely just destroyed them at the worst moments. At the worst moments possible. Blowing leads, playing down to teams that there's a lot of bad, but there's also been a lot of good. Matthew Barzal has played up. I know he didn't have that many points the past week or so, but he has played up to the contract that he signed. I mean, I know he was still making the last amount of his last contract, which was about $7 million. But he's been good. I think J.G. Pajot has been great this year. I think he's had a bounce back year from last year. I think their defense, there's been times where you could say, like, where did the Islanders' style of defense go from the past couple of years? And maybe it was Trotz, maybe it was his system, but the way that sometimes they just let teams roam around has been very alarming. But I could see why, like, they've wanted to let go of the defense a little bit. I think they've let go of it maybe a little bit too much. They're depending on goaltending again, which that's the Islanders' MO. But there comes to a point where you got to be able to get the puck out of your own zone, stop being soft, be physical. I think over the past couple of weeks, they let teams bully them around, and that wasn't like that the past 3-4 years. They would be the ones who would wear teams down, and instead, you can make the case also because the Islanders are an older team that they're able to be worn down quicker. But that shouldn't be the case because they were doing it to teams left and right for the past couple of years. So there's a lot of good. There's a lot of bad. As Joe was saying, they're 2 points out of a playoff spot. They could easily make the playoffs. Could they play Boston and get smoked in the first round? Sure. Could they play Carolina and get smoked in the first round? Yes. But when the Islanders get in, sometimes when they get in the playoffs, no one knows what to expect from them. No one knew what to expect from them when they were in the bubble. No one knew what to expect from them under Trotz, in the first year under Trotz. So there's a lot of question marks. I think I will take their goaltending to get them to the playoffs. I will take Sorokin. I think Sorokin's been great this year. Varlamov, I think he's had a very underrated year. I know
Yes.
the numbers won't say it because the team hasn't played that great in front of them the past couple nights, but I will take their goaltending to get to. I don't want to say drag them to the postseason to get them a postseason spot, but I
It
think
may be a drag.
that maybe, but they have the edge there over Pittsburgh, over Washington, and that's where I see it. I mean, I think it was not Joe, it was Gary who said that there's one more move to be made. There might be. I think there definitely is one. It could be Scott Mayfield. It could be Semyon Varlamov. I think these next 3 weeks are going to determine a lot about what Lou is going to do. Because if they fall flat on their face, even after getting Horvat, then okay, you could possibly get a first or second rounder for Mayfield because he's on an expiring contract. You could also get a possible first or second for Semyon Varlamov. And Varlamov said he wants to come back here already. So you could trade him, and then you can bring him back in the offseason on a cheap deal. So a lot is riding on these next 3 weeks right before the trade deadline. And if they're in it, make another move, show that, all right, we're not retooling. We're like, this is still a win now team. We're not just going to give up the season. Like, I know a lot of fans wanted them to fall out, bottom out for Connor Bedard. That's not happening. That's not happening under Lou. That's not happening under this leadership. I said, like, they needed to ruffle some feathers. It's been a long time coming, and they did. I think it was completely necessary. But this team should now be on notice that nobody is safe. Are there a couple guys who are? Yes, but the core is not going to stay intact. And Lou is giving you he's giving you his last shot. Like, all right, I got you guys something. Go make it work. And if they don't, all bets are off. You could do it. Then everyone's up for grabs, except for maybe Barzal and Sorokin.
Joe, anything else to add? Are you good there?
Well,
before we get into the trade deadline, I'll give my opinion real quick, folks.
Okay.
The Islanders are not out of the playoff hunt. They really never have, despite all this losing that they've been doing. I'm agreeing with Rob 100%. The Pens are in some serious trouble. I'm looking at the standings right now. And for those of you who don't follow us and you're brand new here, we here at Isles Talk, we follow the percentages. We go by the point pace. We don't go by those actual standings just yet. Folks, the Penguins are on pace for 95 points. That's the highest they've been all year. And they're struggling right now just to stay afloat between 90 and 95. They're in some serious trouble. The Capitals, at one point, they were down to, give me one moment. Nope, wrong one. The Capitals were on pace at one point around Thanksgiving for 74 points. Okay. They're now at 93. That's a 20-point gap. What does that mean? It means the Capitals already spent quite a bit just trying to catch up to the wild card. And like Rob said, their goaltending, their entire team, they may be burnt out soon. The Capitals are going to have to do something if they want to maintain where they're at. At this point, though, I don't see the Capitals doing it. The Islanders have had their slump. The Islanders are fixing things now to correct things. The only team I'm concerned with, and I said this a couple of weeks ago, were the Buffalo Sabres. The Buffalo Sabres right now are riding on a natural high. But the Sabres were also on pace for 74 points back in Thanksgiving. They were right where Washington was. And now they're on pace for 94 points. I technically have them in the playoff hunt right now in 8th place. But again, they're young. They're inexperienced. How long do they have on natural energy at this point? Because it's a natural adrenaline rush. How long does Buffalo have?
Can I just make a point?
Go ahead.
Are you going to trust Ilya Sorokin and Semyon Varlamov to get you to the playoffs, or are you going to trust Eric Comrie and Ukko Pekka-Luukkonen?
There you go.
I know, and I didn't mean to cut you off, Paul. I know they have Tage Thompson. I know they've got Dylan Cousins. They've got you.
But that's perfect, though. Right.
They're a young team. I didn't think their jump was going to come this year. I thought they were going to make some noise. I thought next year, really when they're going to make their big jump, because they have a goaltender in their system in Devin Levy, who is supposed to be the next. He's supposed to be the next, best goaltender outside of North America, who's not playing in the NHL. I'm sure I think I got his name right, but they're waiting for him. They've got everyone else, in the system, but I still take the Islanders goaltending can get you through a season. We've seen it. We've not even just with the Islanders. We saw with the Rangers last year. Yeah. I don't mean to get off tangent, but if it wasn't for Igor Shesterkin, they don't make the playoffs last year. He got them to the playoffs. He really
Good point.
We're going to add to that too. We're going to add to that too. We're going to go to the Pens right now. Tristan Jarry's out long term, to my knowledge. That just came up. Tristan Jarry's now out long term. So everything Rob's been saying is correct. You've got every goaltender that is not scary at the moment. The Islanders are improving their offense, and they have the best goalie tandem. They're looking like they're ready to go. The Rangers. Let's talk about the Rangers real quick. Okay. Shesterkin. They're riding Shesterkin. Yes, Halak's on what? He's on a 2-game, 3-game winning streak. He got hot. That's not going to last long. 5?
5.
Okay. That's still not going to last long. That's even better because now Halak's not going to make it much longer. Okay. They are going to ride Shesterkin all the way to the playoffs. And Joe, you said this before. The Rangers, by the middle of the season, if they continue to ride Shesterkin the way they are, the Rangers could fade early if they don't make any kind of trades.
Well, he faded in the playoffs.
Yeah.
Against Tampa. He fell flat on his face after the second game in that series.
So, folks, as far as the Islanders are concerned, we were saying this at the beginning of the season. This was our theme. The Islanders still reminded us back then of the 2000 Devils, where they were going to take it the first half of the season. Lou was taking a look at the entire organization, and then he started making those trades for Alexander Mogilny and Malakoff. Folks, it's the same thing right now. He took a look at the entire organization. He showcased his, the kids. He's made those decisions. He's already brought in Bo Horvat. Yes, Gary, the Islanders are going to make one more move, a minimum one more move. Okay, so we're now talking trade deadline. Gentlemen, we've been talking about it right now. The Sabres, if I'm the Sabres, I run with what you have. Run with what you have. See what the kids can give you. You're running on house money. See how far they can take you. And if they miss ever so slightly, maybe you can get someone for depth. Go ahead, Rob.
Let's say the Islanders fall out. Would you trade Varlamov to Buffalo if you get you a first rounder or a second rounder? I would.
Ooh.
They would need a goaltender, and Varley is shown in the playoffs. He's a playoff caliber goaltender, and he could get to places.
Maybe. I'm not against that.
Hope it doesn't
I'm not against that. But the question is, and this is going to be an open question for fans. Do you want Varlamov back next year? Because there are some times when players get traded, even though they want to stay. Yes, you're sending a player away for a draft pick, and then you're hoping to re-sign them. But sometimes that still sings with players. So,
just look at David Perron. He does it all the time.
Yeah.
Whatever.
But it's always St. Louis. David Perron loves St. Louis. I'm waiting for David Perron to go back to St. Louis, but that's not happening now. But, do you want to move on from Semyon Varlamov? Okay. If you want to move on, go ahead and trade him. But I'm not going to lie, folks. I don't think this is going to come down to like the final week. If the Islanders squeeze in, I think this is going to be, Joe, a race to the finish. This is going to be a horse race right to the finish, and we're going to have either Boston, Carolina in the first round, maybe the Devils, depending on where we end up, because the Rangers may be slowing down. Trade deadline, though, strictly for the Islanders. Who are we looking at?
Oh, well, Lou making a deal this early, I say that's the splish. And
yes,
then, I think we have the splash coming. I still think it's going to be Tarasenko. I'm going to say it. I've been saying it all season.
Yep. We've been saying it now for 3 years.
Joe, what kind of a pick is it? What kind of a deal is it?
I think it's going to be Mayfield. Probably Bolduc.
No, you had that other word say it was a sexy move.
Oh, sexy, the sexy winger. Oh,
yes, the
yes,
sexy
yes.
winger. Yes.
No, listen. He made this move. He made this move early. Okay, coming out of the All-Star break, he did this to strengthen the team, give the team a little bit of a kick in the ass, a little bit of a wake-up call, like Rob said. That's great. Horvat's never going to hurt you. Okay,
No.
But do I think he goes out and gets that big name player? Yeah, I think, and I'm saying it again, like I've been saying, I think he's gonna bring in Tarasenko. I think he's gonna bring him in. It's probably gonna cost us Mayfield and one of our younger defensemen, maybe Hutton or Bolduc, maybe one of the forwards. But hey, look, this is the move you got to make. You know, we got to make a move, and this is the move. Tarasenko is the move.
Okay.
Well, that's
Gary.
That's the splash.
Gary loves playing armchair GM, so I'm going to do this right on purpose on Gary.
Not.
Yeah, but real quick, Gary, I'm going to cut you off. Robin, there's nothing on Chychrun right now. Lou hates whatever Arizona was asking for. He made that public. Gary, go ahead. Who do you want?
We've all been saying about that sexy pick for the last, how many months?
3 years. 3 years.
Yeah, 3 years. Okay. But it was funny just watching the pregame show before we came on the air. I heard Bissonnette talking, and Bissonnette basically called the Islanders the dullest team in the history of hockey. He was going off on them, and I hope Islander fans got on his Twitter account and started blasting him, because you know what, to solidify this team, because once we get in the door in the playoffs, all bets are off. We're a different team. They come January, February, they can talk about this team all they want, but when it comes down to playoff time, we all know from our experience from the prior few years what kind of a pain in the what team we can be. So I think we've all been talking about Tarasenko kind of deal. I'm wondering, I don't know how young he is or whatever, but I was looking, another kind of a guy that might be good if they would be willing to part would be Chris Terry in Anaheim.
You mean Troy Terry?
Troy Terry. I'm thinking Chris Terry from Bridgeport. That's right. I'm thinking that's just my shot in the dark. But
okay.
Okay. But like I said, I if I was the other teams in the NHL, I would fear if Lou makes another big move, because that means everybody's going to realize they're going to make the playoffs, and when they do, they're going to be a pain in the what to play against, and that plays right into our strengths.
Okay, Rob, what do you want?
Well, I think for me, with the move right now that they just got with Horvat, I think Patrick Kane is no longer an option. Timo Meier is no longer an option. Vladimir Tarasenko is no longer an option. But there's another Blues player, Ivan Barbashev, who I believe I read about it today from Kevin Kurz. He's the kind of guy who might not cost a lot. He's a depth guy. He's a bottom six forward, which you never can have enough abundance. You can always have an abundance of bottom six forwards. He had 61 points in 80 games last year. He hasn't had a great year this year. Maybe he needs to change the scenery.
Mm-hmm.
Reminder, he's another Russian. There's Sorokin.
Very well said. Yes.
There's Semyon Varlamov. There's a few here who would help him acclimate. But I think he would be a solid addition. I think it's going to come down. I think their top six is set right now. I really do. I don't think they need another top six forward. I think what they need is another bottom six guy and another defenseman. Could that be Shane Gostisbehere? Maybe. Could it be John Klingberg? Possibly. These are guys. I mean, so some of those guys, their contracts could be a problem. I mean, depending on the cap hit. But they don't. I think they've done their big game hunting. I think Bo Horvat, he was out of the 5 most likely guys to get traded. He was, I'd say, around 2 or 3. and he like at the top of the list for the trade deadline. Now I'm looking at more, okay, you strengthened your team in the way you wanted to. You got younger, you got a guy who could score goals, and you got a guy who could skate and win faceoffs. Now you need another guy depth-wise who can give you consistency on the like in the bottom six, can help out that fourth line, maybe even help out that third line. I mean, I don't know how much longer Josh Bailey is going to be on this team. It's sad to say, like, I thought he was going to be a lifetime Islander, and he still can be. We don't know. But I think the writing I think we're coming to the end of possibly his tenure. I think a guy like Barbashev could be a replacement for him. I mean, I wouldn't want that, but that's just the way sometimes it goes. He's been here a long time. But I think to me, it comes down to with their trade deadline plans, it should be a depth defenseman and a possible top 4 defenseman, depending on the price. I think because Lou dealt with Arizona before, I think it's Bill Armstrong last year when he made the lab trade. So there's familiarity there. And if Gostisbehere is one of those guys that's being floated out there, I think he'd be a good addition. I think, we said about Chychrun, I think he's out of the question. I mean, I think he's injury prone. We saw he just got back, I think about a month or two ago. So that also worries me a little bit. But I think those are the two pieces that can help them get over, get over the top, put them over the top, but they would be solid enough additions to where, okay, if they get Boston in the first round, they get Carolina, they can give them a run for their money. And I've been telling people this. I think Boston, they shot their load early. I think they could be out in the first round easily. I agree. A Tampa situation. And not to say, I don't think that the Islanders could be the team to knock them off if they play them, but you get a hot goaltender and you get a team that's coming in, that's expected to get blown out in 4 games.
Could be the Sabres. It could be the Sabres against Boston.
Could be. But I would actually put my money on the Islanders to do it more because the Islanders play the Bruins style. Maybe it's a little bit differently. We saw in that playoff series 2 years ago, the Islanders wore them down. And that Boston team that they have now is maybe just a slightly bit tweaked out of what we saw 2 years ago, outside of Pavel Zacha and maybe one other guy on their defense, and maybe Derek Forbort and their goaltending. I'm telling you, Ilya Sorokin's the best goaltender in the league. No questions asked. I'll take him over anyone right now, maybe outside of Andrei Vasilevsky, to win in a playoff series. So that's what I would look for if they know that they're going to make a run toward the playoffs and get in the playoffs. Depth on the forward position and one more defenseman.
Let me ask you a question.
Go ahead.
Can I ask one question? If you're Boston or you're Carolina, okay, do you really want to play the Islanders in the first round? Seeing what happened the last 2 or 3 seasons, what they've done in the playoffs, do you actually want to face this team in the first round if they're coming in healthy, the Islanders?
I would say no. You wouldn't want to face them because Boston, the way they've been playing this year, everyone just expects them because it's the last run for their core, the Marchand, the Bergeron, the Krejci. They brought back Krejci this year because they knew this is probably going to be Bergeron's last hurrah. I just think because there's history there, and I go back, forget the game 2 weeks ago. I mean, the Islanders were in that game, and then they took, things fell apart because that's the way things have been. Go back to that game in Boston last month. They played them tight. They could have won that game. They probably should have won that game. If not for the shootout, I mean, they could have won the game in overtime. I look at the Islanders pair up very, very well with them. They're a sneaky good matchup against them. Carolina, there's something still about Carolina that I can't put my finger on. Maybe it's the fact that I will not trust Frederik Andersen in a playoff series. And the fact that watching them last year where they could not win a road playoff game would scare the living hell out of me. That would really scare me if I was Carolina. And I know this year they look completely different. They seem like they're never out of a game, and that's great on their part. But in the playoffs, you have to win on the road. You have to. You can't just expect to win all your home games. And the way that a lot of their games played out last year, on the road in the playoffs, they were either getting blown out or they just no-showed. So I don't know. I think if I'm Boston or if I'm Carolina, I wouldn't want to see the Islanders if they got it. It's a big if. Buffalo, I feel like Boston would run through Buffalo, not because Buffalo wouldn't go toe-to-toe with them. Buffalo is a very young team, and you got all those guys outside of Kyle Oposo and Alex Tuck and maybe one other guy who have playoff experience.
Right.
It'd be a completely different mindset, completely different stage for a team like that. I think the Islanders with this core and with this group, they've been through the wars. They know what they're getting themselves into. So I think if I'm Boston, as I was saying, I think if I'm Boston or Carolina, to answer your question, Joe, I wouldn't want to play the Islanders if they got in. I think it would be a terrible matchup for them.
I agree with you.
So I still think let's all agree now that the Islanders are talking with St. Louis on either Tarasenko or Barbashev on this one. I like that idea. The Islanders by the trade deadline, I don't think anything has changed at this point, but the Islanders are going to have roughly $11 million in cap space by the trade deadline. You're still missing Oliver Wahlstrom, presumably for the rest of the season. Nothing. He's still out indefinitely. Hudson Fasching is not. He's not Barbashev. So, Rob makes a very strong case for bringing in Barbashev over Fasching. And we honestly don't know how much longer Cal Clutterbuck is going to be here, if he's going to return for the playoffs or whatnot. So I kind of like that move. But if Lou Lamoriello has $11 million to spend at the trade deadline, I have no problem putting Bailey on the bottom six for the rest of the season and bringing in someone like Tarasenko, another defenseman, and maybe another bottom six forward that we're not even thinking about and be like, oh, Lou did it again.
But don't knock Bailey in the playoffs. He produces in the playoffs.
No, he doesn't. He is the older version of Anthony Beauvillier. Yes, he's the older version to Anthony Beauvillier.
Perfect comparison.
Yeah. He is the older version to Anthony Beauvillier. He performs in the playoffs. And, give Bailey, Peugeot, even Parise on that bottom line. I'll take those three as a third line. Go ahead, Rob.
Or you could do, and this is the conundrum that's going to come starting Monday. If Fasching is back, and I believe he will be, I think they're getting back him and they're getting back a healthy Noah Dobson, which I think a lot of people are overlooking as well, that they're getting back healthy bodies at the right time to start the second half. Do you put Bailey on the first line with Horvat and Barzal, hypothetically, or do you keep him on the fourth line with Cizikas and with Matt Martin? Look, I'm not against either one. I don't know. I mean, the way Fasching was playing before he got hurt, he had that skill that you would like to see on a first line. I mean, look, he's Hudson Fasching. He's an AHL guy. Like, we can go on and on about that. But if he can find his stride, if he could be like a Matt Molson type of situation and find that extra gear, and he's like kind of like you were saying before, Paul, a diamond in the rough kind of, and you play him on the first line and he goes on a run with Barzal and Horvat as his line mates, great. And I'm not opposed to Josh Bailey being on the fourth line either.
No. We
talked at length about Bailey, but if you have your two bottom lines being your defensive minded lines, which the third line is, you're not messing with the third line. I think Peugeot, Parise, and Holmstrom line, I think that stays. That's perfect. No need to touch.
I agree with that.
So this comes back to, all right, if you add Barbashev, you put him on the fourth line. He's a fourth line type of guy. And then the conundrum comes. Do you put Bailey back on the first line? Where do you put him in the lineup? Or do you keep Fasching in there and you just let him keep rolling? So there's a lot of question marks, a lot of hypotheticals, what they would do. But I would stick with, all right, let Fasching play on the first line. Let's see how long he lasts.
Sure.
Keep Bailey on the fourth line and go from there. I think that's probably the smart thing going forward. You're not Second line is set. Third line is set. Your first and fourth line are your biggest question marks right now.
Okay. And again, we have this time now to see what Lane Lambert is going to do. We have a month. We're going to see what these players can do. And if I'm not mistaken, gentlemen, I believe the roster expands after the trade deadline, so we can have anybody on that roster past March 2nd. So even if Simon Holmstrom or Fasching don't play, they're still going to be on the team no matter what. And if any of these veterans start slipping, these kids are going to, these younger players are going to be coming in. I know Fasching's 27, but they've earned their spots here, and these veterans are now on notice. Like Rob was saying, now there is a shakeup coming. There was one shakeup. You could see a few more with some of these AHL players now making that step and taking on a bigger role like they're supposed to. So, any other final thoughts here, guys? Because this has been a really fun, enjoyable time. We'll also take questions here. We'll do a little bit of water cooler talk here real quick for some of the fans here. Who's the one to move from center with Horvat there? I'm guessing Barzal, guys.
Mm-hmm.
It's got to be.
Barzal's going to have a lot more room now.
You're not moving Brock Nelson out of his, because that's his natural position now.
Right.
No, and
Barzal going to wing gives him more room. Go ahead, Gary.
And I'm just saying, and Barzal's faceoff numbers are not that spectacular. So yeah, and like he says, Brock's natural position. So yeah, I think it's a great candidate. You can unleash the beast, if you will.
Will Barzal be okay and productive being a winger if he's the guy? Yeah.
No question.
Barzal, we know is a pass first forward, but depending on who's on his wing, it could be Bailey, it could be Bo, but Bo's going to shoot the puck. So maybe Bailey and Barzal are there for the garbage goals. Bailey used to get garbage goals all the time. Hasn't happened in a very long time though. Barzal could be one of those guys who gets some of those dirty goals.
Well, if you have, just to answer that question, Barzal is your playmaker, Horvat's your scorer, Bailey or Fasching is your defensive guy.
Right.
That's a quality 3-piece set to a line that you would want as a first line. That's what the Islanders had a couple of years. That's what they had a couple of years ago. When you had a Poso, you had Tavares, and you had
Vanek. Yeah.
Right.
A Poso, Vanek and Tavares. We haven't seen it since then.
No.
You had Oposo, Tavares, and Bailey at one point, but again, we're coming back to that moment in time here where we could have a very big, legitimate first line.
Well, there goes Barzal being my next Guy Carbonneau.
Oh, pick another winger then. Pick a winger, good defensive winger.
That's it.
If the power play doesn't improve, Lou's got to fire McLean. Don't know if it happens.
I don't think he's the problem.
No.
This is going back to Scott Gomez or whoever it was in 20. If they are not able to get the puck in the zone, you can't blame coaching. That's just the players just not being effective. I watching their power play this year. It's like pulling teeth. If they never try and bring any speed through the neutral zone. They always try and do a boil. You watch other teams, the way their power play just runs, the way they pass, the way they run rough shot right past the blue line. The Islanders don't do that. I mean, Barzal tries to do too much. They always that back pass. It's been going on for a number of years. It's got to stop because it takes away a good 4 or 5 seconds that could easily be, okay, make a pass, get in the zone. And the other thing is they don't shoot the puck enough. Forget having a scorer like you have in Horvat now. If you're not going to shoot on the power play, what's the point of even having one? You're not going to shoot. The time now that they have Horvat and they're going to have Horvat, Lee, Barzal, Dobson, and anyone else or whoever, somebody else. Now you have to shoot because now you got two guys who can score. You've got two guys who can actually score. You've got Horvat and you got Dobson. It seems like Dobson likes to shoot more. I don't know why they don't set him more up like in a one-timer type of role. Not saying he needs to be an Alex Ovechkin type of guy, but he seems like he likes to shoot.
He puts the puck on the net.
He does.
Right.
He does what Ryan Pulock doesn't do, which is sad to say.
That's been annoying me all season, but we'll get to that later.
It annoyed me since his
Ryan Pulock's our Fulton Reed, 1-5.
Yeah.
Well, see, that's where I like Rob when he said bring in Shane Gottespier. Remember, Paul, we said the same thing. You put him on the power play, and you have a totally different setup.
Yeah. Shane Gottespier here with Noah Dobson. Yes, please.
I'll take it.
Absolutely. So, all right. Do you think this new Horvat, this will be a new Horvat, or will his numbers regress back to his norms previous to this year? I think he's on a natural high. He's in a zone right now. I can't see him regressing, especially with the system that's here.
Wasn't he a 30-goal scorer last year too?
31 last year.
Yeah,
I think 2019 was his best season, right? 61 points or something like that.
Yeah. Yep.
I mean,
regress because he's in a, because he's in the stronger.
He's in an Islanders
East
uniform
as opposed to the Flying West. Yeah.
I don't think he's going to regress. I mean, the Vancouver Canucks are out of the playoff hunt, guys. They've been out of the playoff hunt now.
I mean, can we argue for a second that they're not still a defensively minded team anymore? I feel like that's gone out the window this year in both a good way and a bad way. The good way is because they like to shoot the puck more on net offensively. I mean, I think on Saturday, what they have 37 shots. They had 37 shots on Saturday. I mean, that was more of a wide open game because that's the way Vegas likes to play. But in the beginning of the year, they were shooting the puck at will. They weren't just trying to find the perfect pass like they've accustomed to. So I think they are not really that defensively minded anymore. I mean, I know their goals against is still it's still solid, and so is the amount of goals they've given up this year. But I don't look at them as still the ultra defensive team they were under Trotz for the past up until this past season. I just don't.
I think they're playing basically the same system. I think it's more the forwards that are leaving the defensive zone a little sooner, and that's where I think they're getting burned. It's the forwards to get that offensive jump, which they weren't doing under Trotz. With Trotz, the forwards didn't leave the zone until they had possession of the puck leaving the zone. Now, as soon as the D-men grab the puck, the forwards are shooting up ice. And I think that's going to change now after this playoff break. I think you're going to see them playing a little bit tighter and a little bit more of a playoff style hockey that they did in the past.
Without sacrificing the offense. We were talking about this at the beginning of the season about balance, and we were wondering what Lane Lambert was going to do. Was it going to be Trotz? Was it going to be a Doug Weight style? And so far, we've seen more of a Doug Weight style than we have a Barry Trotz. I think at this point, he needs to adopt a little bit more of a Barry Trotz to balance everything out. And then this is just what's been said on the show, tonight and a couple of times. They need to tighten up defensively, but not lose that offense. And bringing in someone like Horvat certainly is going to help.
Just to add on to the becoming tighter defensively,
mm-hmm.
I noticed the trend this year, and I think I tweeted it out a bunch of times. They got to stop taking penalties. They have to stop taking 4, 5 penalties a game. I think go back to some of the games last month where the Calgary game, the Edmonton game, they were taking penalties just left and right, and they were giving themselves no room to really get their game going. They need to stop taking penalties. They need to be a lot more disciplined. If they're going to make the playoffs this second half, they need to be a lot more disciplined. Stop taking stupid penalties. Stop taking penalties in the O-zone. I'm looking at Anders Lee right there because he's taken some back-breaking penalties this year. And it's costed them games. And that's a lack of communication. That's also a lack of leadership. So they need to stay out of the box. I think them being tighter defensively will help that. But I think it's a huge add-on to how this second half could play out too.
Other than Anders Lee, when someone says the Islanders have got to stop taking some dumb penalties, who's the first player you're thinking of? I'm not going to lie. Scott Mayfield's kind of right up
Mayfield,
there.
yeah. He took some doozies.
Yeah. Casey Cizikas.
And Casey Cizikas. He's close too. Like these are vets we're talking about here, guys. It's not even the younger players. It's these vets.
I mean, I remember Cizikas last year, I think, had a career high in penalty minutes. And I think this year he's not near there, but it's kind of still trended that way. But Barzal's got to he takes some dumb penalties. Like, I mean, the usual suspects. And just to transition to Scott Mayfield, I don't know if after this year, I mean, he's going to be turning 30. He's not fleet of foot. I think his game has slowly been on the down. Look, I love Scott. I love the physical presence. I love that he likes to get in players' faces. But I feel like under Trotz was his bread and butter. I think this year has shown a lot of the warts in his game that I think it might be time, not even go younger, but I think it's time for him to find a new change of scenery also.
And that may play into what Joe was saying before at the trade deadline. Maybe it is Mayfield going. We don't know yet, but it all makes sense. And I'll throw this one in here. Samuel Bolduc has not looked out of place.
No.
His defensive partner down in Bridgeport has been Grant Hutton. Hutton is under a 1-year deal next season with the Islanders. Nothing would shock me if we saw something like Bolduc and Hutton as a third pair next year, since they've already had that chemistry, at least to start the season. But again, that's just a conspiracy theory. It's not out of play. Hutton plays a very simple game. Bolduc's a little bit more of a complete defenseman in terms of what he can do for now. He just has to show more consistency, but there is something there that might suggest that this might be it for Mayfield. But then watch Lou re-sign him for 4 years at 3.5. Who knows?
Well, his contract is it's probably the what's the word I'm looking? It's
player friendly or team friendly.
Thank you. It's probably the most player friendly out of any contract that's been signed in the past 5 or 6 years. I mean, he's making $1.45 million. Like, that's an absolute steal on any team.
So we'll find out. Any other questions, comments, concerns in the water cooler talk time? Oh, I put on the wrong one. Oops.
Guys, real quick, I have to jump out.
Go for it.
I'm going to say goodnight to everybody. Rob, Gary, good seeing you. Paul.
You too.
Yeah,
See you
whatever.
later.
Whatever.
Take care, guys.
So, closing thoughts here, guys.
I had one.
This is good. Go for it.
We brought up Lou enough in this chat. I think we can bring him up one more time.
Go for it.
Let's say this is his last year. I don't know the contract situation. If it is what it's been reported, who do you want running this team if they don't bring him back? Because now I think ownership really they knew 5 years ago. 6 years ago. No, it was 5 years ago. Excuse me. When it was time, the writing was on the wall that it was time to make changes after them missing the playoffs 2 years in a row.
Right.
This would be the second time in that same kind of way. If they miss the playoffs, that's missing the playoffs 2 years in a row. And that's when ownership was fed up. And I don't know if Scott Malkin's fed up. I don't know if John Ledecky's fed up. We won't know until after the season's over. But let's say that Lou is not coming back. Who do you want? Who would you like to see this team run by? You want a younger kind of general manager? No, I don't know if maybe a Tom, not even like a Tom Fitzgerald type, but even like Say someone like they have in Chicago, who was like, who knows? All right, we're in a rebuild, but we're gonna build the right way. We're not just gonna like try and fast track everything. Because this team is more in a retool than a rebuild. We could say that now.
Definitely a retool.
It's been retooled so many times. Yeah.
I've said this before. The Islanders cannot go into a rebuild. I wrote down on Isles Talk this past week. The Islanders are in fact building a hotel and casino right by UBS Arena. So the Islanders are going to be in a win now.
Oh, that's not even. The hotel hasn't even been in the discussions yet. Despite
that's fine.
It's not there. It's not there. It's not. They're not going to even think about a hotel until that retail village is done. So it means they're not even going to go to the county, to the state to get all this done for at least 3 years. So you're talking that's a 6-year timetable for that to even get done. So don't.
Because I recently heard different. Which is why I wrote the blog to begin with.
Yeah, but they haven't talked about it yet. They haven't even put it into the state's hands yet.
I think all that stuff is extra as compared to their next year will be their 3rd year in a brand new building. And I know that they've raised ticket prices because I've heard it from my dad. I've heard it from my brother. I've heard it from my friends who have season tickets, whether it's $2 up $2. They cannot go into a rebuild.
No.
They just can't.
No.
You can't raise ticket prices. You can't go into your 3rd year in a brand new building that's attracting that was going to be the reason that you're going to attract free agents who want to come here. Forget about just the Long Island lifestyle. Having your own arena, your own building, state of the art,
right.
Still new. That's the biggest thing. That's the biggest part of this all. So they cannot go into a rebuild. We could say that until the cows come home. They are it's all retooling. Like Gary was saying, they retool all the time. But this retool would be the way that they would have to do it after this year, whether it's under a new GM or it's still under Lou. It's got to be the smart. They can't just try and keep patching things. It's got to be like, all right, you're either going to break up this core, or whoever is going to break up this core and get younger, or you're going to do something like really dramatic, like try and bring in like a huge name and then stick with what you got. So.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
To answer your question about a GM, let's just have fun here and say it's not going to be Chris Lamoriello. I would want to do something that Detroit did way back when. I would want an assistant GM who's been around for a while, who hasn't been given a shot. I'm looking at, I don't want to say Jimmy Devellano, but I want something of that theme. Someone who's been an assistant GM for a while, who knows the ropes, who's been around for a while, and he's just needed a shot, or she's needed a shot. I wouldn't care who it is, as long as they have some kind of background with the draft, being a GM, if they've made any kind of decisions in that capacity. I'm not familiar with a lot of the assistant GMs right now, but I would go the assistant GM route.
Yeah, I was gonna say I'm not either. Like with the, I don't know all the. I'm just saying, you want a guy who's kind of like not the same as Lou, but has enough experience, or do you want someone who's who's younger, that sees maybe the game is the way the direction the game is going, and people could scream all they want on social media that Lou is a fossil and the game has passed him by. He knows what his team needs at the right time.
Right.
I do still think, and this also maybe goes back to one of the reasons why Trotz isn't here anymore, his reliance on veteran players and not giving them too much of a long leash, instead of let's see what we got in our younger guys, give them some more time, things like that. I don't like, that's just my own thinking.
James, I'm putting you on the spot. Ron Hextall.
No. No. He's not leaving Pittsburgh. They're not going to. I don't think Pittsburgh is.
No, he's not leaving Pittsburgh either. No, that's not happening. He just wrote "just kidding." So yeah, okay.
I know, but I'm throwing him another bus.
And the other thing that comes into this, do you keep Lane Lambert? Let's say they make the playoffs, but they have a new GM. I think I would keep Lambert. I think he's gotten a bad rap this year. I do think sometimes it's more the players that are given to a coach more than the coach to the players, because obviously he does have the ear of the room. We saw it early in the season when he was benching Bo. He was benching Beauvillier. He was benching Bailey. He's not afraid to take guys' ice time away. So I don't think he's a terrible coach. I think the team construct to give it to him has made things 10 times more difficult than it's needed to be this year so far. And the injuries haven't helped either, because you've had to play basically half your AHL guys too. So
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. No, I would definitely go with I wouldn't say a Kyle Dubas. I wouldn't go that young.
no, thank you.
I probably find someone in between. Mid 30s, perhaps early 40s. And they got to have the experience. They got to have the experience of a lot of winning. So maybe the assistant from Tampa Bay, maybe the assistant from Dallas, you know, the assistant GM, heck, even from St. Louis. Give me someone who's had a winning pedigree, who can work the cap, because the cap's still not going up just yet in the short term. And he or she needs to be a really good evaluator, not just of players, but of people. That's that quality that Lou was always and is very good with. Of course, that comes with a lot of years of experience with Lou, but they got to have a good read on their players. So I'm up in the air. If Lou is gone, I would want an assistant GM who's had a very good pedigree, and their next step is a GM.
Would you bring back Trotz to be a part of because there was talk, I remember reading about it during the summertime after he got that he might want to have a more, not say general manager, but a higher up position in the organization. Would you possibly have the thought to bring someone like him back? Let's say there's a new GM and this GM also, and maybe wants to bring him back into the fold, because let's say, I know he wants to coach again. He's already said that a million times. He said that in plenty of interviews. But let's say he doesn't get a coaching job and he did want to have a more say in the like managerial role. I'd bring him back in a heartbeat, because obviously he knows how to build. He knows what to get out of team. He can squeeze the most out of whatever team he has.
He could, but he'd also be a great. Again, he's been around Nashville when the expansion teams. He knows all about being a part of the draft and going through it and everything else. If Lou just took the executive position, you have Trotz come in as like an assistant GM or special advisor to this other brand new GM.
Special advisor.
Yes,
not
special advisor. I'd be all for that. So, I'd have no problem with that. As long as the GM has the proper people around him or her, I'm all for it.
I like the deal. I like that thought, but I have a feeling he's going to be the next GM in Nashville. That's my guess.
Okay.
David Poile is as old as Lamoriello is. He's been the only general manager that Nashville has known. He is very close with Barry.
Yes.
And he's moved back to Nashville. So to me, obviously I think Hines has done an okay job there, and they've got a shot for the playoffs. But he could become maybe even a dual title. Take over the team for whatever and be the president and a GM. Because he's always said he wanted to do a managerial job, and I think that would be a great spot for him. Although I wouldn't mind if he came back here, but yeah. I just my spidey senses are saying Nashville.
What about the coach thing? If let's say the Islanders get a new GM, are you keeping Lambert, or do you go try and find?
See, this is where I want the GM to be more like Lou. Talk to the players. If the players really want Lambert back, because some of these players are going to be here for a while. If they really like Lambert, give him a leash of at least a year and see what he can do with this team and go from there. I think if they really, really struggle under Lambert, you bring someone else in.
Right. You don't have to overhaul right away.
No.
Give it a little time. If things don't work out, then you cut the ties and you bring your own guy in. Listen, Paul, I'm going to have to cut out too. I got to get up at 5:00 tomorrow.
Okay.
All right.
Gary,
good talking to you
been
guys.
a pleasure. Yep.
So, yep.
Take it easy.
Yep. Forgot he had to work, but no, I like that question, and we can go a little further with that. Maybe the GM adds someone else to the coaching staff who's had some coaching experience, just in case.
I mean, I don't know. I mean, we already saw one fire, like a Bruce Boudreau getting fired. I don't know if would you bring someone like him in next year? It's just a hypothetical. Just thinking.
Sure, I'd bring in Bruce. I would bring in Bruce as an assistant.
Right now.
Sure.
Think so?
As an assistant coach, absolutely.
It's an interesting thought because obviously his players love him. They've loved him in Washington. They loved him in Minnesota. They loved him in Vancouver. From what it sounded like, I'm just looking down the road at next year. If a new GM does come in, do you bring in someone like a Bruce Boudreau, or do you go with maybe, I don't know if a first year bringing in a guy who's been an assistant coach around the league, like that kind of thing. Like, but I feel like the way, because of how this team is constructed, I feel like they're better off with like a veteran voice than they were. I mean, we saw how bad it was under Doug Waite. I mean, he coached them for 2 years, but year, like technically
year and a half,
but he had no idea what he was doing.
Right. And that's what the Islanders can't have. Right.
Yeah. Not to say that has like nothing against his assistants. I know, Luke Richardson seems like a qualified. I mean, he's a head coach in Chicago now.
Chicago.
Yeah. And I forgot who else was on his staff, but get guys like that. Like, you need guys who have been around the league a long time.
Well, let's throw an Islander favorite here, Derek King. Derek King now has all that experience with Chicago.
He's an assistant there
got him somewhere. He is a player's coach, but maybe you bring in someone like Derek King.
I even let's say and I don't think he's on the hot seat because the Kings seem like they're finding their way again this year. Tom McClellan, I don't think would be a bad choice.
No.
I saw someone just said Jacques Lemaire. Absolutely not.
Yeah, I know. I'm laughing. No, they like joking here. They like poking.
I mean, would it surprise you? Because that's what Lou seems to do. He always.
No. Jacques Lemaire is still a special assistant to the Islanders somewhere. So
he's been like that since Lou came around.
Yeah.
But I'm looking at it more. This team, it always seems like the way they've been constructed under Lamoriello, they are better off with a veteran coach. I mean, Lambert's had 20 plus years of experience. Travis Green.
Travis Green.
It's interesting because he got the most out of he squeezed a lot out of what the Canucks had. He got he did the bubble.
Brush, I'm impressed. Brush never comes up with a good one. All right, let's go. All right, we're bringing up some old Islanders here, but Jeremy Colliton, I've always been a Jeremy Colliton fan, but I don't know if he can do NHL.
I think the situation he was given in Chicago was, I think, it put him behind the 8 ball immediately. They knew they were in a rebuild, like they were in the middle of a rebuild, and they just had to make a decision. They had to do what they had to do to get rid of Quenneville. There's a guy I think, I've heard, would he finally be let back in the league is an interesting question. Because if he is, I would bring Joel Quenneville here. If you're a new GM, I'd try and get him here in a heartbeat. Not to say, let's say Lou is still back. Lou signs an extension. I feel like that's the only guy who would be able to get him to come here. He got Trotz to come here. He sold him big time. I wonder if he could sell a guy like Joel Quenneville only if he's reinstated back, or whenever whatever happens in that.
But I believe Quenneville went to Florida because he honestly thought Florida had a chance to win a Stanley Cup. The Islanders, I got to give Quenneville, the players wise, I got to give him a reason to come, and it's got to be Stanley Cup worthy. So if they make the playoffs this year, that might entice him to, come over here.
it's a good thought, but it's also okay. Hypothetically, you bring in Quenneville, you've got an elite goaltender.
Mm-hmm.
Let's say Horvat is signed already. You've got your top and Nelson. You've got two top centers. Barzell becomes good on the wing. You've got a solid winger. You've got a foundation. You've still got Adam Pelech. You've got Ryan Pulak. You've got Noah Dobson. There's pieces.
Romanov will have a better year next year.
I think Romanov, I think this year has been a learning curve for him. I really do.
Exactly.
He's only 23 years old. I
Yeah.
wasn't expecting him to come in here and be like an absolute stud.
Ow.
I was expecting more. All right, he's coming into a new system. He's got to learn. There's been flashes. There's definitely. I think. Look, we've seen what he can do. He's a physical guy. He loves to hit. Likes to be physical. He can shoot. He can shoot. We've seen that. He likes to play. One thing he said in the offseason was he wanted to be a little bit more offensive. He wanted to play a little bit more offense. And I think he's doing that, which is good to see. I think there's still some growing pains. There's definitely been growing pains. I think he'll get there. I think he can be he'll be a solid number 4 in the next year and a half.
Absolutely.
His contract is also friendly. So a couple years down the road, let's say the Islanders are in a rebuild, and if he's not a part of it, even though he should be because he's only 23,
exactly,
you could probably get something for him. But this is talking like 2, 3, 4 years.
2, 3, 4 down. Yeah.
But there's a lot. It's a lot of question marks, and that's why getting back to what all 4 of us said before Joe and Gary had to leave.
Right.
This next month is
Big
going.
Time.
It's going to. They're at a crossroads. And it's going to tell you where they're going, like what they have to do moving forward, whether it's a new GM, new players, and this, like everything is hinging on if they do or don't, like if they fall on their face or if they fight for a playoff spot.
Absolutely. So, guys, I want to thank you for chatting in the chat room there. Some of you guys had some great questions, some great responses to the coaches. GMs will come to that when it finally happens, if it does. Rob, I want to thank you for coming on once again. This was a lot of fun. Where can they find you on social media?
So @RTab_ on Twitter, and that's basically it right now.
Okay, still working for NHL.com, I hope.
I am. It's now this is my second. I'm in my second year, but like now that the second half is starting, I'll be there until the playoffs, and we'll see what goes from there.
You going to Montreal next weekend?
So here's the thing: is I'm scheduled to work next Saturday at 6:30. The game's at 12:30.
Yeah.
The flight's there, no problem. There's an 8 o'clock, 8:30 flight gets me in there. 10:05 gives me enough time to get through customs and go to the game and get downtown, which takes about 20-25 minutes. The problem is getting back, even though I'll have maybe just like one bag with me. I'll have my book bag or something. The flight leaves at 5 o'clock and gets me back to New York at 6:49. Not to say that I couldn't work on the plane like for the first 15-20 minutes of my shift.
Right.
Not to say I couldn't do that as I'm getting off the plane. Problem is like I waited 2.5 hours to get through customs the last time I went to Montreal, and that was on a Monday in the middle of the summer in July.
Yeah, that's bad.
I'm scared to think, okay, it's a Saturday afternoon. I don't think there'd be that many people at an airport at 4 or 5 o'clock, about 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock in the afternoon. But I'm like, I really wanted to go. I really want to go. I'm testing it. I'm testing to see if I'm really going to do it because it'd be a pinch, but it'd be definitely a worthy pinch. A couple weeks ago, I'll tell you, I kind of let the idea flee a little bit because of how bad the team was playing. But now I'm like, all right.
Horvat changes that.
Well, I'm going down to Philadelphia for next Monday. I'm going down there. I was going to go down there anyway, but now that Horvat is making his debut, I want to be there. I mean, I'll be there. I'll be there on Tuesday against Seattle. I'll be there for that game, but I want to be there next Monday in Philly.
Okay.
But the Montreal game, it's such a tight pinch, and I really, really, really want to do it because I've never seen a game up there, and the tickets aren't that bad, especially with the Islanders place. So I'm gonna probably give it till either next Wednesday or Thursday to see how if I can make it happen, I will.
Right.
And if not, I'll have to wait till next year. But
that's
I'm still on the fence. But I
Okay.
really
I will be down on Long Island Friday night. I will probably be there around 6 o'clock, traffic willing. So we'll have to get together sometime on Friday night, just in case you're not going to Montreal.
I'm actually working Friday. I'm working Friday night.
Ah,
Yeah,
crap.
the
So
NHL, they schedule me a lot on Fridays, which
I
is a
got you.
problem. But yeah, it's going to be a pinch. But if I can do it, I will be up there next Saturday, and we'll have to jet my ass back to Long Island as fast as
Yeah.
possible.
All right, everybody. Thanks for joining us once again. We'll probably be on sometime next week. We'll get everybody's schedule ready to go. Listen, folks, enjoy this next month. It's going to be drama filled. It's the trade deadline. The season has started. Enjoy the All-Star game. You technically have 3 Islanders there now. Have fun this weekend. Enjoy the rest of this month. We'll be back next week. So, Rob, thanks again for coming on. For Gary, Joe, myself, thank you again for coming on to Isles Talk. Don't forget to follow us on Facebook, Twitter at Isles Talk, and don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button on YouTube. We'll see you guys sometime next week. So take care, guys,
Have a good night, guys.
and let's go Islanders.